Okay, so how many of you are interested in improving the quality of your lives? Anybody? Everybody, it looks like? Anybody interested in improving the quality of your businesses? My goodness, we had people around the room that been in business 30, 40, some even 50 years with your family's business. And you've got me beat. I didn't start at 6. I didn't start till I was like 12 or 13. So Dad, yeah, good job. The final question is, how many of you are interested in having fun in the process? Anybody? Yeah, nice and high, good. Life is too short not to have some fun in the process, right? And you guys own your own businesses. You've got control over whether you have fun or not in your businesses. So I'm telling you right now, I'm giving you permission. It's okay to have fun in your businesses. It's one of the reasons you're business owners. So make sure that you have fun in the process. But as we start this morning's session, which is a great time of the year to be doing it, the Design Your Life session, as we prepare to go into 2012, I want to first talk about the foundation for success at the Dwyer Group, which we call our code of values. When Don Dwyer founded the Dwyer Group back in 1981, he was very clear about his belief system. So he knew who he was and what he was about and wanted to make sure that he incorporated that into the Dwyer Group. And no matter who he touched, whether it was employees, franchisees, bankers, I remember specifically, he made sure the bankers knew what his values were and wanted them to play by the same rules. But the bottom line is Don Dwyer implemented the code of values company-wide, and he held us accountable to those values. Now, he didn't just make those up. Don Dwyer studied great leaders. So what he did is he said, who are all the great leaders in the world that I can study? And I want to take their greatest lessons and I want to put them in to my code of values, and then I want to work hard to live by those. And I'll tell you right from the get-go, we are not a perfect company. If my father were here today, he'd say the same thing. We're a company that has high standards, and we work very hard to live up to those standards, but we do make mistakes. We're a company run by human beings, so we're naturally going to make mistakes from time to time. Not on purpose, hopefully. That's not our intention. So when Don Dwyer suddenly died of a heart attack at the age of 60 in 1994, one of our greatest fears as a management team was what happens now. Here the guy who led this business, who's the founder, the driver, the entrepreneur, the visionary, is not here. And he's the one who really held us accountable to the code of values. How do we keep this culture special without Don Dwyer here anymore? Well, we knew that we needed some help with that. Sometimes we don't all have the answers, right? Many of you have been in business for a long time, and today you've decided you needed to invest in a franchise because there's something about it that's going to help you take your business to the next level, because we can't all be good at everything. So we brought a consulting team in and we said, how do we maintain this culture that Don Dwyer worked so hard to create, with the foundation being the code of values? He's not here to hold me accountable anymore. So how do we do this? And they recommended we take Don's original code of values and operationalize them. So basically take his belief system and convert it into something that we could live by every single day. So if you'll find this card, everybody's got a Design Your Life binder, and inside the binder there should be a code of values card. On one side of the card, you'll see at the top it says, we believe. And I'm sorry, these are very small. We want this to fit in your pocket or in your pocketbook. So these are really small, but there are larger versions. I think in the back of your binder there should be a large version of the code of values. So the we believe was Don Dwyer's original values. Things like loyalty adds meaning to our lives. So even though Don knew what he meant by that, it wasn't always clear to everybody whether or not they were living up to that value. So they weren't absolutely measurable. So if you turn the card over, when we came up with the operationalized code of values, the one thing we wanted was measurable values, because you can't manage what you can't measure. And we knew if Don wasn't here anymore to hold us accountable to these, we had to be able to hold ourselves accountable and, frankly, to hold each other accountable. So what we did is we came up with standards. Some people might call them standards, but in our minds they're values that are very black and white, mostly black and white, so that everybody should understand what we mean by those. And if they don't, one of the reasons I do this session is to help you understand what we mean by each one of the values. And one of the things we knew was we had to put an affirmation before each value. So at the top you'll see, we live our code of values by. So anytime we review the code of values, we always want to say we live our code of values by X, whatever it is. Because that's just reminding yourself that this is how I operate. You're telling your brain, this is how I conduct business, this is how I live my life. So the consulting firm basically said, let's create the standards, and then let's go out to your employee group. We didn't go to the franchisees when we initially came up with the operationalized code of values in 1995. Because we knew first as a management team, we needed to lead by example before we even asked our associates to lead by example. We have a saying in Waco, because we're on the Brazos River, the fish stinks at the head first. Right? So if the leader's not willing to lead by example, how can you ask your team members to lead by example? So we knew as a management team we had to demonstrate our commitment first before we asked the employees. And once we got the employees to buy into it, then we knew we could bring it out to the franchise owners and then ask you guys to also do the same thing. So we played a game at the Dwyer Group. You may have read about it in the book Live Rich. But for 90 days, we said to our 125 associates at the time, we were a much smaller company back in 1995, but we said to all of our associates, we think we have the solution to how we keep the code of values alive at the Dwyer Group, but we need your help. As a management team, we want you to give us feedback anytime you find us violating one of these new values. So basically, we gave every associate one of the values cards, and we said, study them. Get familiar with them, because the only way you can catch us doing something wrong is if you know what to look for. The employees loved it. They're like, yes, we get to find management doing something wrong, and they're giving us permission to do that. That doesn't happen very often, does it, in companies? So we said to the employees, find us doing something wrong, and if we violate a value, give us a verbal beep. So the game was called the beep game. So anytime an employee found a management team member violating a value, all they had to do was go beep and go about their business. Became a bit comical around here because the employees weren't afraid to find us doing something wrong, which we really appreciated. So today it's very rare that we have to terminate somebody at the Dwyer Group, because they know coming in, this is who we want to have working with us. These are the franchisees we want to have as part of our organization. And if this doesn't feel right to you, if you don't think you can live up to the code of values or at least give it your best shot, then we're not the best place for you to be, whether you're an employee or a franchisee. So again, today it's very interesting. It's very rare that we have to terminate a team member. And so many times, they'll say, oh yeah, when we're hiring somebody, yeah, we're going to play by those rules. We love them. That sounds good. They want a job. And then they get here and they get that we're serious about it, because each of the team members can hold them accountable too. And that peer pressure can get pretty tough. So sometimes people will leave on their own just because they realize we're serious about this. This is not a joke. This is truly who we want to be as a company. And if you're not living up to this, the other team members are going to hold you accountable. I don't have to do it because they've got permission to do it. So the beautiful thing about these values is we have systematized them. Again, during that 90-day beep game, we had a lot of beeping that went on in this organization. And as a management team, instead of getting frustrated and depressed, we said, what an opportunity. We think we're pretty good already as an organization, but how much better could we really be if everybody really worked hard to live by these values? But as a franchisor, we said, we've got to make it a part of what we do every single day. Because so many businesses, so many organizations will have a strategic planning process. Have you ever been to one of those strategic planning meetings? Right? You identify a vision statement, a mission statement, and a code of values or a code of ethics, and then what happens? You spend a lot of time and money on that strategic planning session. And then where does it go? It sits there, goes on the shelf, right? Or it goes in the drawer. Maybe you put something up on the wall in the hallway so that people can see it, but you never talk about it again until it's time to do the next strategic planning session 5 years later. And they go, it's time to do another strategic planning session. And you say, why? Well, because the last one didn't work. We didn't follow it. Why didn't you follow it? Because you put it away. You didn't do anything with it. So we didn't want to be guilty of that. We didn't want to be guilty of just having it up on the wall as you walk into our buildings or handing it out on a card. Instead, we said, as a franchisor, everything is about systems, right? We say that if you work the system will bring success. So we said, let's talk about it anytime we have a meeting of 3 or more of our team members. Again, we first started just with our associates. So anytime we had a meeting of 3 or more team members, we would actually take the time to review each value. And it literally takes just a few minutes. It doesn't take a lot of time. But what we found is it brought things to the top of mind. So as you're beginning a meeting, you all came in to this training session this morning, and there's something was going on in your lives before you got here. Whether you had a rough trip getting here, you didn't sleep good last night because you were nervous, the van was late getting you here, whatever. There's always a story behind you getting here. And that's with any meeting, right? There's so much going on in life that you get to a meeting, and we're basically saying, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath, and let's review the code of values before we start this meeting so we can all play by the same rules. So we incorporated that at the Dwyer Group for almost a year. We actually asked our associates to get used to it and start living by it before we introduced it to our franchise owners. And today, this is one of the most important things you can do as franchise owners. If you implement this and you lead by example in your franchises, there's no other organization in your community, service organization, that can touch you. It's serious, isn't it, Sue? It's absolutely true. It's the toughest job you might have, but if you'll lead by example and you'll let your team hold you accountable, you will find success. This is so important to again, creating that strong foundation in your business. So what I'd like to do now is just go through the code of values. We'll do one at a time, and I'd like to go around the room so I can start at this end and ask you to do the first one. If you're not interested in reading a value, feel free to say pass, and we'll go on to the next one. But just recognize when we get to the final value, we all say having fun in the process together, because I can have all the fun I want to on the stage here, but if you guys aren't having fun, it's going to be a terrible day for you. You're going to be tortured, and I don't want you to be tortured. I want you to really enjoy the process, which means you need to participate. All right? So I'll start with the first value, and then we'll go one by one, and then together at the end we'll say we live our code of values by having fun in the process. So the first one is we live our code of values by treating others as we'd like to be treated, which is really the golden rule.
We live our code of values by listening with the intent to understand what is being said and acknowledging that what is said is important to the speaker.
We're not saying you have to agree with the speaker. So if you really read this carefully, what it's saying is be respectful enough to listen to what the speaker has to say. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm in such a hurry thinking about what I want to say back that I'm really not listening. So what I'd encourage you to do is don't only listen with your ears, listen with your eyes too. So much of communication is body language, right? Because you could go up to somebody and say, well, how are you doing today? And they go, oh, having a great day. What does their body language say? They are really not having a great day, right? They're clearly saying something they don't mean. So when you're listening to somebody, pay attention. If you're on the phone with them, it's hard. You can listen to tonality when you're on the phone. But if you're face-to-face with somebody, pay attention to their body language as well as to what's coming out of their mouth. So it's just about being respectful. You'll have enough time to say what you want to say. Listen to what that person really wants to communicate. Let's go to the next one.
We live our code of values by responding in a timely fashion.
Responding in a timely fashion. In our businesses, it's imperative, isn't it, that we respond in a timely fashion.